Eli Turner had spent his entire life chasing perfection. Grades, manners, image, everything was under control. Until one ridiculous boy with a loud laugh and a habit of breaking every rule walked straight into his life and tore it all apart. Or maybe, Eli thought later, he didn't destroy it, he set it free. The first time Eli saw Jackson Hale, the guy was standing on a cafeteria table, performing an impromptu Shakespeare monologue with a half-eaten sandwich in one hand. People were howling with laughter. The teachers pretended not to notice. And Eli, who never broke rules, never even jaywalked, stood there, watching this chaos unfold, and felt something shift inside him. It was ridiculous, impossible, but it felt like the world had tilted just a little. "Are you going to stare all day or join the revolution?" Jackson had called out, catching Eli's eye. Eli froze, clutching his tray of salad like a shield. "I don't join revolutions," he said, before fleeing in embarrassment. The whole cafeteria roared again, this time at him. Eli wasn't supposed to notice guys like Jackson. He was the poster child of Westbridge University scholarship student, Dean's favorite, model citizen. People called him the machine. Always calm, always perfect, but perfection was lonely. Especially when the same people who praised you for being focused never saw the quiet panic behind your eyes, the fear that if you ever slipped, if you ever showed who you really were, it would all disappear. And somehow, that loud, messy, smiling idiot from the drama department could see straight through him. A week later, Eli found himself outside the campus theater, drawn by the sound of laughter. He peeked through the half-open door and saw Jackson again, this time, rehearsing a scene with a group of students. His laughter filled the room, wild and unrestrained. There was a moment when Jackson turned toward the audience, toward Eli, and smiled like he'd been waiting for him all along. "Hey, Brainiac," Jackson called. "You lost? Or finally here to live a little?" Eli stepped inside, heart hammering. "I'm not lost," he said quietly. "I just wanted to see what all the noise was about." "Noise?" Jackson grinned. "That's art, man." And that was how it began, with teasing words and late-night rehearsals, with awkward conversations in dim hallways, with Eli sitting in the back row while Jackson performed his heart out on stage. Somewhere between the laughter and the silence that followed, Eli began to forget who he was supposed to be. It didn't help that Jackson was everything Eli wasn't: messy, impulsive, chaotic, alive. He wasn't afraid to say what he felt. He wasn't afraid to laugh too loud. He wasn't afraid to look at Eli like he meant something. "You ever get tired of pretending?" Jackson asked one night, sitting on the steps outside the theater. The campus was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of rain. Eli looked away. "Pretending what?" "That you're fine." Eli's breath caught. He didn't answer, because if he did, he might not be able to stop. Jackson didn't press. He just sat there, shoulder brushing against Eli's, close enough to feel, far enough to pretend it didn't mean anything. But it did mean something. It meant everything. Soon, Eli found himself smiling at texts he shouldn't care about, waiting for messages that never came fast enough, lying awake wondering if it was normal to feel this much for someone you weren't supposed to love. And Jackson kept being Jackson. Wild, brilliant, infuriating, beautiful. When their professor announced the upcoming spring production Romeo and Juliet, reimagined as a modern play about prejudice, Jackson begged Eli to join as the assistant director. "You've got the brain, I've got the charm," Jackson said. "We'll make a killer team." Eli hesitated. "You think I belong in theater?" Jackson smiled. "You belong wherever you want to." It was the first time anyone had ever said that to him. Rehearsals turned into late-night talks. Late-night talks turned into quiet confessions, whispered in the dark when the world felt far away. "I used to think people like me didn't deserve to love," Eli said once, staring at the stage lights above them. Jackson leaned closer, voice soft. "And what do you think now?" Eli swallowed hard. "I think I'm starting to forget the rules." Jackson grinned, but his eyes were gentle. "Good. Rules are overrated." For a moment, they sat there, two boys from different worlds, wrapped in the fragile silence of something they didn't yet dare to name. Of course, the world noticed before they did. It started with rumors, whispers in hallways, mocking laughs, Someone scribbling "Drama Queen and his pet robot" on the whiteboard in the library. Eli tried to ignore it. Jackson laughed it off. But behind his grin, something in his eyes began to break. "You think this is funny?" Eli asked one night, cornering him after rehearsal. Jackson shrugged. "If I don't laugh, I'll punch someone. That's not a solution. And hiding isn't either, Eli." Eli froze. The words hit like a slap. Jackson stepped closer. "I get it. You're scared. But I can't be the only one fighting for this." "This?" Eli whispered. "What is this?" Jackson's jaw tightened. "You tell me." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them trembled with everything unsaid. Then Eli turned away. "I can't," he said quietly. "Not now." And Jackson, for the first time, didn't chase after him. The next few weeks were brutal. Eli threw himself into work. Jackson stopped showing up to rehearsals. The play began to crumble. The silence between them grew heavy like a wound neither dared to touch. But on opening night, everything changed. Because when the lead actor got sick minutes before curtain, there was only one person who could step in: Jackson. And when he walked on stage, the entire room went silent. He played Romeo like a man who had already lost everything, raw, heartbreaking, utterly real. And when he looked toward the audience, his eyes found Eli in the front row. The monologue wasn't in the script, but his words cut through the air like a confession. "You can't cage love," Jackson said. "It finds a way even when you're too afraid to name it." Tears burned in Eli's eyes. He realized, too late, that the whole world could see what he'd been hiding. And maybe that was the point. When the curtain fell, Eli didn't wait for applause. He ran backstage, found Jackson still catching his breath, makeup streaked, sweat glistening under the lights. "You're insane," Eli said, voice shaking. You said all that." Jackson smiled faintly. "You heard me, right?" Eli hesitated. Then, for the first time in his life, he stopped thinking. He grabbed Jackson by the collar and kissed him. The world outside could burn. For once, he didn't care. The next morning, the entire campus was buzzing. Someone had filmed the kiss. By noon, it was everywhere on social media, in student group chats, even whispered about by professors who pretended not to care but clearly did. The video was grainy, shot from backstage, but the emotion was unmistakable. Eli, the perfect student, kissing Jackson Hale, the school's beloved troublemaker, under the fading glow of stage lights. For most people, it was entertainment. For Eli, it was an earthquake. He spent the entire day hiding in his dorm room. Every knock on the door made his stomach twist. Every notification buzz made his heart race. He could already imagine his father's voice on the phone. "What have you done to your future?" Jackson, on the other hand, handled it the only way he knew how, with humor. When someone shouted "Romeo" across the quad, he blew them a kiss. When another student sneered, "So you're dating the robot now?" Jackson just grinned. At least he comes fully charged. But behind the jokes, there was a new kind of silence in his eyes, a small flicker of worry that he couldn't quite hide. That night, Eli finally texted him. "Eli, can we talk?" Jackson, "Thought you'd never ask." Theater, midnight. When Eli arrived, the stage was dark except for a single spotlight, shining on the center. Jackson sat there, legs crossed, holding a script he clearly wasn't reading. "Dramatic as always," Eli murmured, stepping closer. "Comes with the job," Jackson replied softly, standing up. "You okay?" Eli laughed dryly. "Do I look okay?" Jackson's smile faded. "You look like you're about to run. Maybe I should." "From what? Me? Or the truth?" Eli turned away, jaw tight. "You don't understand what this means for me. For my scholarship, my family, my reputation, your reputation," Jackson repeated. "Right? Because that's what love's about, keeping the right people happy. Don't twist this." Jackson stepped closer, voice trembling now. "Then explain it to me, Eli. Because I thought when you kissed me, it meant something real." "It was real," Eli snapped. "But the world doesn't care about that. They'll turn it into a joke. You'll move on, and I'll be the one paying for it." Jackson stared at him for a long moment, eyes shining with something halfway between anger and heartbreak. You think so little of me? Eli opened his mouth, but no words came. Jackson nodded slowly. Got it. He dropped the script, the pages scattering across the stage like snow, and walked away without another word. The spotlight flickered out, leaving Eli standing alone in the dark. The days that followed were unbearable. Whispers followed him everywhere, in the cafeteria, in the library, even in class. Professors hesitated when they called his name. Friends stopped texting. The perfect image he'd built for years was crumbling, piece by piece. Then came the email from the dean. Eli Turner, please report to the Academic Integrity Office regarding conduct concerns. His stomach dropped. When he arrived, the dean, a man with cold eyes and a colder smile, handed him a printout of the video. We've received complaints from donors and parents, he said. They're concerned about the message this sends. Eli forced himself to stay calm. Sir, this isn't against any rules. Technically, no, the dean admitted. But we expect our scholarship students to uphold the university's reputation. Public displays like this are problematic. Eli stared at him, disbelief giving way to anger. Problematic how? Because I kissed someone? Because that someone's a man? The dean's silence was answer enough. When Eli walked out of that office, his hands were shaking. For the first time in his life, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt rage. He found Jackson sitting on the lawn, surrounded by his theater friends. Can we talk? Eli said sharply. Jackson blinked. You sure you want to be seen with me? Stop it, Eli said, voice cracking. Please. The group exchanged looks and drifted away, leaving the two of them alone. Eli sat down beside him. The grass was still damp from last night's rain. I might lose my scholarship, Eli said quietly. Jackson turned to him, eyes wide. What? Why? Because they think I'm a bad image now. He laughed bitterly. Guess loving someone the wrong way is bad for PR. Jackson's expression softened. Eli. But Eli cut him off. No. Don't say you're sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. He took a shaky breath. For the first time, I think I finally understand how broken this system is. Jackson looked at him carefully. What are you gonna do? Eli smiled, small, fierce, and a little dangerous. I'm going to fight back. 2 days later, Eli stood on that same cafeteria table Jackson had once used for his ridiculous Shakespeare performance. Only this time he wasn't running. He raised his phone camera on, live streaming to the university page. Students turned, staring, whispering. My name is Eli Turner, he began, voice steady. And I'm here because I'm tired of pretending that love should come with rules. The crowd hushed. Even the hum of the vending machines seemed to fade. I'm gay, Eli continued. I kissed someone I love. And if that makes me a problem, then maybe the problem isn't me. Gasps. A few claps. A phone recording from the back. Eli's chest felt like it might burst, but for once, it wasn't from fear, it was from release. People talk about courage like it's something you're born with, he said. But it's not. It's something you build one choice at a time. And today I'm done hiding. When he stepped down, the cafeteria erupted cheers, applause, even some shouts of support. Across the room, Jackson stood frozen, eyes wet. When Eli's gaze met his, he mouthed a single word. Finally. That night, they sat together on the roof of the old theater, the city lights glowing below them like 1,000 tiny stars. I can't believe you did that, Jackson said softly. Eli leaned back, smiling faintly. Neither can I. Jackson nudged him. You know you might have just blown up your whole future, right? Eli shrugged. Maybe. But at least it'll be my future. Jackson looked at him, quiet for a moment. Then, with a grin, you're kind of amazing when you stop overthinking. Eli laughed a real, unguarded laugh. Don't get used to it. They sat in silence for a while, the night air cool around them, the world feeling strangely peaceful after so much noise. Then Jackson's tone changed, softer. So, what happens now? Eli turned to him, eyes thoughtful. Now we live. We study. We make art. We stop apologizing for existing. Jackson smiled. That sounds like a plan. Eli hesitated. Jackson. Yeah. I never said thank you for making me brave. Jackson's smile faltered into something gentler. You did that yourself, Eli. I just held the light. But not everyone was cheering. The following week, anonymous comments flooded the school's online forum. Cruel words, disguised as opinions. They're doing it for attention. It's a phase. The university's gone soft. Eli read every one of them, even though he knew he shouldn't. When Jackson caught him scrolling, he gently took the phone away. Don't feed the trolls. Eli sighed. I thought people were better than this. Jackson shrugged. Some are. Some aren't. That's why we keep living to prove the good ones right. Eli looked at him, quiet admiration flickering in his gaze. You really don't let things get to you, do you? Jackson hesitated, then said softly, Of course I do. I just don't show it. You think jokes are just jokes? They're armor, Eli. That was the first time Eli realized that behind Jackson's laughter was pain, old, hidden, and heavy. He reached out, hand brushing Jackson's. You don't have to wear it with me. Jackson smiled sadly. You sure? It's a pretty damn good shield. Yeah, Eli whispered. But I'd rather see you. Over the next few months, the noise began to fade. Some people stopped staring. Others came up quietly, thanking Eli for speaking out. A freshman messaged him one night. Because of you, I told my parents. They didn't freak out. Thank you. It wasn't all easy. Some professors still treated him differently. Some doors stayed closed. But Eli was learning to breathe again, to live honestly, even when it hurt. He joined the theater crew full-time. Jackson started writing his own play, a raw, funny, heartbreaking story about two boys learning to love in a world that told them not to. When Eli read the first draft, he couldn't stop crying. It's us, he said quietly. Jackson grinned. Not exactly. My version has a happier ending. The play premiered at the campus festival. Small venue, mismatched chairs, but the crowd was packed. When the lights dimmed and the actors took the stage, Eli sat in the front row, heart full. Every line felt like a heartbeat, messy, real, alive. At the final scene, where the two characters chose to stay and face the world together, the audience fell silent. Then, one by one, they began to clap. Jackson stood on stage, smiling through tears. His eyes found Eli's in the crowd. Eli stood, clapping harder than anyone. When the applause died down, Jackson stepped to the microphone. This story, he said, voice shaking, isn't about being different. It's about being human. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can be. The crowd erupted again. Eli felt something warm bloom inside him, not just pride, but peace. Because for once, he wasn't hiding. He was seen. After the show, Jackson found him backstage. So, he said, pretending to be casual. Did I do okay? Eli laughed, eyes still wet. You were perfect. Jackson tilted his head. Perfect? That's your word, not mine. Eli smiled. Then how about real? Jackson grinned. Now that's more like it. And then, surrounded by the smell of paint and dust and applause, Eli kissed him again, not out of fear or defiance this time, but out of something quieter. Something that finally felt like home. They didn't win awards. They didn't become famous. The world didn't suddenly turn kind. But in their small corner of it, between laughter and stage lights, between love and courage, they built something that mattered. Something true. Because sometimes that's all you can do. It was almost summer when Eli finally decided to go home. For months, he had avoided it, the phone calls from his mother, the emails from his father asking about grades and internships, the quiet guilt that crept in every time he ignored them. But the end of the semester left nowhere else to hide. Jackson offered to come with him. Just in case you need backup. Eli shook his head. They'll already have a hard enough time seeing me. I don't want to make it harder. Jackson didn't argue. He just hugged him long, pressing his chin into Eli's shoulder. You're stronger than you think, he whispered. Eli smiled faintly. You keep saying that. Because one day you'll believe it. The Turner house in suburban Michigan hadn't changed. The same manicured lawn, the same family photos on the hallway wall, the same faint smell of lemon cleaner that made everything feel too perfect. His mother met him at the door, eyes bright with worry. Eli, oh honey, you look tired. I'm fine, Mom, he said automatically. But when his father appeared from the living room, newspaper still in hand, the air thickened. They sat in silence for a long time, Eli at the end of the couch, his parents across from him, like a trial waiting to begin. Finally, his father spoke. We saw the video. Eli nodded slowly. I figured. Do you have anything to say for yourself? He looked up, meeting his father's eyes. No excuses, just the truth. His mother shifted uneasily. Eli, people talk. You have to understand, it's not easy for us. Not easy for you? He repeated, voice shaking. Do you have any idea what it's like to be me? To spend years pretending to be the son you wanted. When I was dying inside, his father's expression hardened. Watch your tone. I've watched it my whole life. Eli snapped. I've watched everything, what I said, what I wore, who I looked at. And for what? So I could live in a cage built out of your expectations. His mother started to cry softly. His father looked away, jaw tight. Eli, his father said finally, you're still our son. But this, he gestured vaguely, this lifestyle, it's not what we raised you for. Eli took a deep breath. Then maybe you didn't raise me to be me. Silence. For a moment, he thought his father might throw him out. But instead, the man just sighed, shoulders slumping with something that almost looked like defeat. Go to your room, he said quietly. We'll talk later. Eli nodded, stood, and walked down the hall not as a child obeying orders, but as a man refusing to break. That night, he sat by the window, phone in hand, fingers trembling over Jackson's contact. He typed, they saw it. It didn't go well. A moment later, Jackson replied, still breathing? Yeah. Barely. Then that's something. Proud of you. For what? I didn't change anything. You showed up. That's the hardest part. Eli stared at the message for a long time, tears stinging his eyes. Then he wrote back, I miss you. I miss you too. Come home soon. Okay? I am home, Eli. You are my home. He pressed the phone to his chest and let himself cry. Not out of weakness, but out of release, a lifetime's worth of hiding, finally unraveling. The next morning, something unexpected happened. His father knocked on the door. Can we talk? He asked. Eli hesitated, then nodded. They sat outside on the porch. The sun was rising, painting the world in soft gold. I don't understand this, his father admitted quietly. I was raised to think certain things, that love looked a certain way, that success meant fitting in. He paused, eyes distant. But I watched that video again last night. You didn't look ashamed. You looked free. Eli swallowed hard. Because I was. His father nodded slowly. I don't know how to change overnight, but I don't want to lose my son over something I don't understand yet. For the first time in years, Eli smiled at him, small, cautious, but real. That's all I needed to hear. His father reached out and squeezed his shoulder. Just give me time. Okay? Yeah, Eli whispered. Me too. When he returned to campus, the summer heat had settled over Westbridge like a soft haze. Jackson was waiting by the theater steps, wearing a paint-splattered shirt and that same ridiculous grin. The moment Eli saw him, something in his chest eased. You came back, Jackson said. I told you I would. Jackson tilted his head, studying him. You look different. Probably just exhausted. No, Jackson said softly. You look lighter. Eli laughed. Guess I left some of the fear behind. Good, Jackson said, stepping closer. Because I've been working on something, and I need you for it. What now? Eli asked, smiling despite himself. A summer project, Jackson said, eyes glinting. It's called Love Isn't a Mistake. Eli raised a brow. Let me guess. A play. Jackson grinned. A film. Our film. They spent the next 2 months creating it, writing, shooting, editing, arguing, laughing until dawn. It wasn't fancy. The camera was old. The lighting was inconsistent. Half the time, they borrowed props from the drama club. But their story was real. 2 boys finding courage in each other's laughter. They called in friends to act, classmates to help with sound. Word spread fast. Soon, half the campus wanted in. When they finally screened it at the end of summer, they didn't expect much. Just a few students, maybe some faculty. Instead, the small auditorium filled up. People sat on the floor, stood in the back, leaned against the walls. And when the credits rolled, silence filled the room, a soft, reverent silence that said everything words couldn't. Then came the applause. Loud, unending, filled with something deeper than excitement. It was recognition. Eli looked at Jackson beside him, both of them blinking back tears. They didn't need to speak. The whole room had already said it for them. After the show, a freshman approached them, a shy boy clutching a notebook. "I just wanted to say," he murmured, "your film. It made me feel like maybe I'm not broken." Jackson smiled, his voice thick. "You're not. You never were." When the boy walked away, Eli turned to him. "You realize you just changed someone's life, right?" Jackson shrugged. "Nah, we just told the truth." Eli looked at him with something close to awe. "That's the difference between you and me. You make chaos look holy." Jackson grinned. "And you make logic look romantic. Guess we balance each other out." That night, they walked down to the lake behind the theater. The air was warm, the moon reflecting off the water like silver glass. Jackson skipped a stone across the surface. "You ever think about the future?" Eli smiled. "All the time. It used to terrify me. And now it just feels open." Jackson sat beside him, quiet. "I used to think I'd never make it out of this town. Never find anyone who'd see me for more than a joke. And then you showed up with your perfect grades and your terrified eyes, and suddenly everything felt real." Eli laughed softly. "Terrified eyes, huh?" Jackson grinned. "Yeah, but the bravest heart I've ever seen." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the water lap against the shore. Then Eli said, "Jackson? Yeah, I love you." Jackson looked at him, the laughter gone now, replaced with something soft and endless. "Took you long enough." He leaned in, kissed him gently, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything, it just was. The following semester, their film got picked up for a student film festival in New York. They traveled there together, their first real trip as a couple. The city was chaos and light and noise, but somehow, walking beside Jackson made it all make sense. On the night of the screening, they sat in the dark theater, fingers intertwined. When the credits rolled, people stood, clapped, cheered. Afterward, a journalist approached them. "So, what do you hope people take away from your story?" Jackson smiled, then looked at Eli. "You answer." Eli took a deep breath. "That love doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs courage." The journalist nodded, eyes shining. "Beautiful." As they walked out into the night, Jackson whispered, "You know, I think you were meant for the stage after all." Eli laughed. "Only if you're there with me." "Always," Jackson said simply. Years later, people still remembered that little film, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Eli became a writer, teaching creative expression to students who thought they didn't have a voice. Jackson worked in theater, directing plays that broke hearts and healed them in the same breath. They lived together in a small apartment above a coffee shop, walls lined with scripts and photos and memories. Every morning, Eli made coffee while Jackson hummed old Broadway tunes off-key. Every evening, they'd sit by the window, talking about everything and nothing, the way people do when love has settled into something strong and steady. Sometimes, they'd still fight over deadlines, over dishes, over who left the lights on. But they always found their way back to laughter, because that was what they'd learned, that love wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence, about showing up, about choosing each other again and again, even when the world didn't understand. One night, years later, they returned to Westbridge for a reunion screening. The old theater had been renovated, new seats, better lights, but the same heart. After the showing, a student approached them holding a phone. "Can I take a picture? You guys are legends." Jackson laughed. "Legends? Us?" Eli smiled. "We just didn't quit." The photo captured them in a candid moment, Eli leaning into Jackson's shoulder, Jackson laughing mid-sentence. Two men who had once been afraid to exist, now radiant with quiet joy. As they walked out into the cool night air, Jackson looked up at the sky. "You ever think about that first kiss?" Eli chuckled. "How could I forget? You nearly dropped a prop light on us." Jackson smirked. "Worth it." They stopped under the same oak tree where they'd once argued, cried, and fallen in love. The campus lights glowed faintly around them. Eli took his hand. "We made it." Jackson squeezed his fingers. "Damn right we did." And with the sound of the city humming far away, they stood together, two men who had once been afraid of the world, now unafraid to love it back. Because in the end, their story wasn't about defiance. It was about truth, about laughter, about the kind of love that survives everything, even time. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.